Now, you're going to ask yourself this question, or I asked myself this question: what is trauma? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I was watching a video with Gabor Mate, who talked about how trauma is like a wound, an open wound in you that has happened from an incident that has created this wound, which can go either ways. It's either there's a scar from the wound, which becomes something that becomes very uncomfortable. So anytime anything touches it, it hurts. Or there's an open wound. And in that open wound, we all know what it feels like to have an open wound. Once even breeze touches it or fly perches on it, you feel the sting. And that's what trauma is in who we are. Now, honestly, why am I really talking about trauma these days so deeply? Because the truth is that a lot of us have grown up with trauma, and we have grown up in dysfunctionality. We've grown up in dysfunctional families just by being born in Nigeria or Africa, where in the time where, at least my generation, the only way we could reprimand children was by beating them or punishing them, because it was way more than disciplining. It was punishing, and we were inflicting pain on the children. So you would have seen mothers use broom to beat their children, use cane, use horse whips, use koboko, use cables, light cables to beat their children. Not just mothers, fathers also would do the same thing. You will see parents who withhold food from the child because the child has refused to do something, withhold love from the child because the child came back home with bad grades, withhold all kinds of things, gifts, compare us to other siblings or other children, and told us how hopeless and how useless we are. We've used damaging words like, Yoruba, you say, Oloshi, Olori Buruku, Koni Dapue. Those are words saying how useless you are, how you will never be anything good, you will never amount to nothing. Then on top of it, we've had religion. Religion has said that we're sinners. Just from being born into this world, you're a sinner. And you are unworthy of everything that you have had or you will ever have. And so because of the grace of God, that is why we are even breathing. So really, we are at God's mercy. How on earth do you think any human being can function properly coming from this scenario? Now, we have normalized it also. You hear people say, I've had friends say, oh, when my father was talking to me, I couldn't look into his eyes. I had to look down for my father to speak. And when my father speaks, I can't say a word. Whatever he says, he's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So once he speaks, I cannot talk again. You hear people normalize it and say, it was okay that they were not there for me, but I'm sure they loved me. I'm telling you what I've heard my clients say. It's okay. My father beat me because he loved me. So now my husband is beating me because he loves me, and I'm okay with it. We're hearing all kinds of things. I've heard all kinds of things. A young girl told me how she dreamt about Superman, and she was taken to church and she was labeled a witch and she was beaten. She was only 6 or 7 years old when this happened, forgetting that she could have watched Superman in the daytime and dreamt of him at night. So we've had so much superstition. We've had so much the devil as the problem. We've had so much the enemy. Everything has been on the outside. Oh, it's you that is making me angry. It's you that is. So all these words, after all I've done for you, where would you have been if not for me? I sacrificed my life for you. All these words come from trauma. Everything. Now, as children, there's a developmental stage. You have the infant stage, you have the toddler stage, you have the preschool years and the school years, early school years. This is between when you are the ages 0 and 8. A lot of times, I, for one, I'll use myself as an example. My mother wanted me to be a boy, and I came out as a girl. How did I know this? It was in hypnotherapy. because I went back to my mother's womb in one of my sessions, and I heard her say something. Now, I carried that unwanted feeling for over 40 years. That unloved feeling for over 40 years. I just knew that, or I just felt like I wasn't loved, and I felt like I didn't belong in in my family. Not that they said anything to me, but I came already feeling like that. So you can imagine the trauma I carried for 40 years of not being wanted. I mean, more than 40 years actually, of not being wanted and not feeling like I belong. When even God, our Father that created us, we also are not worthy of His love, but for His grace. And all these things stack up, guys. And so we go through life believing that there's a pattern of life. You grow up, you marry, you have children, and then, you get all the degrees, of course, and keep feeling the degree aspect, the professional side of us. And nobody's focusing on the physical and the personal side of us. And I was at a conference yesterday where we're talking to HR practitioners and managers. And I was saying, look, what we have been taught is how to build our professional side. So we have all the degrees. We have masters, we have mistress, we have professor, we have all the accolades, MBI, BSA, AIDS, STGs. We have all the titles. And I always add those two because they're funny to me, right? Because we just like titles. Now, yes, they're tangible. Yes, they have made it seem that with these things, then we can rise and climb the ladder of success and fame and then feel worthy. But I dare say to you, none of these things actually make you feel worthy. Because once you get it, you're just like, okay, done, dusted, what next? What next? But because we have been trained to be human doings, we keep doing and doing and doing and doing and never being. So this is what I'm going to say to you. Yes, trauma has come from an incident that we have made mean something, and then we carry that story and make it an imprint in our lives, and then we keep repeating that story over and over and over again, like a looping tape that keeps it seemingly like it is happening every time, but it's not. Now, pain might be inevitable, but suffering is a choice. How do you stop suffering? By healing, guys. By healing. I would never have been able to sit in front of this camera and speak to anybody at some point in my life, and I'm saying just barely 3 or so years ago. One, I was afraid to stand in front of the camera, even if I'd worked in the television industry for about 16 or so years at the time. I would never stand in front of the camera to present anything because I was afraid, and I felt very unworthy, and I thought, why should people like me? The truth is, I didn't like myself. And because I didn't like myself, I projected that on other people. And we do it all the time. We project how we feel on other people, how we think of ourselves on other people, and assume that that's what they are thinking about us. Meanwhile, we're the ones thinking that thought all the time. And we project it to other people till it becomes physically present, which is a self-prophecy, and then we're hurt by what we started. The only way for you to heal, or the only way to live a trauma-free life, is by looking at it and getting aware of it, shining a light. If you were sick and you went to the hospital, the doctor will ask you, what are your symptoms? You will share your symptoms. The doctor will then say, go and run a test. Run a test for this. They bring out their documents, run a test for this, run a test for this, run a test. If you're in Africa, the first 2 is malaria and typhoid. Then they will ask you blood count. Do this. Maybe you have an infection. They're checking you out for all these different things to know what they're healing. what they're going to be giving you a prescription from. That's the same thing with therapy and what it can do for trauma. We need to know what the trauma is. We need to know why the trauma. We need to know how the trauma, and then we need to know what story you are telling about the trauma. And then when we're able to shine a light on that, we then have understanding. So I act as an investigator. I want to know exactly, I'll ask you certain questions, and then I'm able to say, okay, so this is where some of it is, because the truth is, in your consciousness, you don't actually know all the details, but your subconscious mind, however, has all the details. And that's why I always go for hypnotherapy, because it bypasses your consciousness and goes to your subconscious mind and gets all the juicy details and all the juicy information that when we heal it from the subconscious mind, your life changes forever. And that's the truth. So for trauma, we need to know why. We need to know why you're acting avoidant. We need to know why you're acting anxious. We need to know why you are confused. We need to know why you are detached. We need to know why you're angry. We need to know why you're resentful. We need to know what your triggers are, because they're all pointing a finger into you, and that finger tells us, okay, this is where it happened. And in therapy, we're able to then say how to change the story, because everything is based on the interpretation you give to anything. I'm going to say that again. Everything is based on the interpretation you give to anything. And so when we're able to change the interpretation, the thing changes. So trauma, honestly, is not a disease. It's something that has happened to us in our lives, that we have created an imprint and we have left it open, and it's wounded, and we keep going back to, even when it somewhat dries, we go and peel it out again, and then we continue to replay it consistently, continuously, repetitively, and then it stays as though it is still happening. But the truth is, Sadhguru says it's dead. It's a memory. Memory is not living. You are. So today, why not go and get help? Why not send me a DM today? If I've said anything that has resonated with you today, anything, even a physical ailment could come from trauma. I've had clients who had physical ailments, cysts. They had all kinds of physical diseases. And when we touched the root of it, it was a traumatic experience that made them create that physical ailment. And we just don't know that we do that for ourselves. Because the truth is, when you hold on to something so deeply, one day you implode and then you explode. But when you implode in your body, it's like a volcano. If you close it and it ruptures inside you, what do you think will happen? That's food for thought today, okay? So think about it and do yourself a service today and seek help. Heal from your trauma, heal from your pain, heal from your hurt and resentment and unforgiveness and anger and anxiety and fear and your closeness. Heal from it and love yourself differently today. Send us a DM and let us help you. Love and light.